A retired couple signs a purchase agreement for a vessel priced at $200,000. The marina broker collects a commission of 6%, $12,000, paid entirely by the seller. The buyers never see that number on any document they receive. What they do see is a financing disclosure listing a monthly payment that feels, if not comfortable, at least manageable. What they do not see is that the broker who walked them through every cabin and pointed out every navigational feature was, the entire time, a legally compensated agent of the party on the other side of the table. $12,000. That was the part in plain sight. The part that was not in plain sight was the full cost of ownership across the first 10 years, a figure that, for a vessel in this price range, will run somewhere between $300,000 and $450,000 above the purchase price itself. The boat cost $200,000. Keeping the boat costs more than twice that again. This is not a story about one bad deal. It is a layered structure with at least 5 moving parts, and each part is engineered to extract value from someone who has not yet done the arithmetic. The parts have names: depreciation, carrying costs, maintenance schedules, insurance tiers, and the marina economy that monetizes the water between the boat and the open sea. The question that governs everything that follows is this: in the transaction chain that begins when someone decides they have earned a boat and ends when they sell it at a loss a decade later, who actually captures the money? And is it ever the person who believed they were buying freedom? That question cannot be answered yet. Before the ledger opens, the dream has to be taken seriously, because the dream is real, and the people who buy it are not foolish. They are responding to something genuine. Picture the vessel on a calm morning in a well-maintained harbor. The teak brightwork still wet from the overnight dew, the hull a deep blue that shifts color as the light moves across it. The smell is salt and fiberglass and something faintly mechanical, but in a clean way. The way engines smell when they have been recently serviced by someone who cares. The lines are right. The proportions are right. Standing on the dock, a person in their mid-60s who spent 40 years in an office, or running a small business, or raising children between paycheck cycles, looks at this object and understands immediately that it represents something a paycheck could never represent. It represents time recovered. It represents a self that was deferred. The salespeople, and they are good at what they do, not predatory in any theatrical sense, just professionally enthusiastic, speak a vocabulary that functions as identity transfer. They say passage maker and blue water capable and liveaboard ready, and what they are selling is not a fiberglass shell with a diesel engine, but a version of a life that the buyer has been imagining since before retirement was even a word that applied to them. The cockpit is wide enough for guests. The galley is fitted well enough that someone who cooks seriously will not feel compromised. The stateroom has a window that frames the horizon at exactly the right height when you are lying down. Every detail has been arranged not to demonstrate engineering, but to close the emotional distance between the person on the dock and the person they intend to become. The arithmetic, everyone agrees, is for later. The commitment happens first. The pen touches the paper while the light is still good and the harbor is still quiet, and the number at the bottom of the page feels like the end of something rather than the beginning. Now the ledger opens, and it does not close. The first benchmark is depreciation. A vessel in this category loses somewhere between 8 and 15% of its market value in the first year of ownership, and between 30 and 45% over the first 5 years. Applied to a $200,000 purchase, that first-year loss runs between $16,000 and $30,000. The second benchmark is carrying costs, marina fees, insurance, registration, and winter storage, which run collectively between 3 and 8% of the vessel's original purchase price annually. On a $200,000 boat, that is $6,000 to $16,000 per year before the engine runs once. The third benchmark is maintenance. Engine service, anti-fouling paint, electronics calibration, upholstery replacement, and the long list of mechanical interventions that saltwater accelerates. Conservative estimates place this at 2 to 4% of purchase price per year, rising as the vessel ages. Applied to the same purchase, that is $4,000 to $8,000 annually at the low end, and the low end requires everything to go right. Bundle all three. In an ordinary year, the owner of a $200,000 boat absorbs somewhere between $26,000 and $54,000 in costs that produce no equity, no return, and no resale credit. These are not worst-case numbers. These are the expected numbers, built into the asset class, known in advance by every broker, insurer, and marina operator in the transaction. What is advertised is the view from the cockpit. What is owed is a second mortgage on the water. The first escape route reasonable people attempt is buying used. The logic is airtight on its surface. Let someone else absorb the first-year depreciation cliff, purchase at the bottom of the steepest part of the curve, and enter with equity already partially protected. Brokers who sell used vessels will present this logic themselves because it is genuinely true in its framing. The problem is the inspection regime that surrounds a used purchase. A marine survey, the professional assessment that stands between the buyer and an invisible hull problem, costs between $500 and $1,500 and is paid by the buyer regardless of outcome. The surveyor is hired by the buyer. The surveyor's liability, however, is limited to what is visible and accessible at the time of inspection. Engine internals that are not disassembled are not inspected. Below waterline osmotic blistering that has not yet breached the gel coat is not discovered. Electrical systems that function intermittently may function perfectly on survey day. The used vessel that looked like a savings of $60,000 off the comparable new price can, and with meaningful frequency does, present $60,000 in remediation costs within the first 2 seasons. The depreciation protection is real. The risk transfer to the buyer is also real, and the two often cancel. End every argument before this one with a number. This one ends with a mechanic. The boatyard that hauls the vessel for its first post-purchase bottom job is not affiliated with the broker who sold it, is not interested in the price paid, and charges by the hour for labor and by the foot for the haul and launch. Whatever was saved in the purchase price begins its negotiation with whatever the yard presents on the invoice. The escape route from new boat depreciation leads directly into used boat remediation risk, and the person administering the remedy has no interest in the original transaction. The arithmetic is indifferent to the strategy. The second escape route is the partnership or syndicate model. 2 couples or a small group of friends splitting ownership of a vessel they could not individually justify. The carrying costs are divided. The insurance is shared. The marina slip is a shared line item. On paper, the structure halves the exposure. In practice, it introduces a new set of costs that are not financial. Usage conflicts emerge within the first summer in the majority of syndicates because the calendar fills faster than 4 adults anticipated, because one partner is more aggressive about offshore passages, and another prefers the boat to stay in protected water because someone's guests leave the vessel in a condition that causes a conversation no one wanted to have. Syndicates that persist past year 3 are the exception. The dissolution of a syndicate converts a shared asset back into a single-owner sale, usually under time pressure because at least one partner wants out. And time pressure at the point of sale is the mechanism that closes below market value. The structure that was designed to reduce exposure becomes, at exit, an accelerant on the loss. This kind of breakdown, the arithmetic behind assets that are sold as identity and priced as freedom, runs here regularly, and following it costs nothing for anyone who prefers numbers to narratives. The next escape route is the one that feels safest of all, and it fails in the most counterintuitive direction. The third escape route is the charter offset, the arrangement in which the vessel is placed with a management company that rents it to paying crews during the weeks its owner is not using it. Revenue from charters offsets carrying costs. The boat pays for itself. The management company takes between 30 and 50% of gross charter revenue as its operating fee, then bills separately for cleaning, provisioning replenishment, fuel return, and accelerated maintenance, because charter clients use equipment at a rate private owners do not. What remains after fees and reimbursable expenses in most reported structures covers somewhere between 40 and 70% of annual carrying costs in a good year, with high utilization. A boat that generates 2 weeks of charter revenue in a low-demand shoulder season covers far less. The vessel also accumulates hours faster than a privately used boat, which means the depreciation curve steepens rather than flattens. The charter offset model does not eliminate carrying costs. It converts a portion of them into a management relationship in which the manager captures a guaranteed percentage and the owner absorbs the variance. The manager does not lose money in a slow quarter. The owner always does. What is earned in a charter arrangement is partial relief and accelerated wear. What is advertised is a boat that pays for itself. Now consider 3 people who arrived at the same dock by different doors. The first financed the purchase. A loan against a vessel in this category carries an interest rate somewhere between 7 and 12%, depending on the term, the lender, and the borrower's profile. On a $160,000 note, 20% down on a $200,000 vessel, the interest paid across a 15-year term at 9% is approximately $120,000 to $130,000. The buyer who financed has paid roughly $330,000 for a vessel that, at 15 years old, carries a market value somewhere between $30,000 and $70,000, depending on condition and market timing. The gap between cost and value across that term runs between $260,000 and $300,000. That figure does not include maintenance, insurance, or slip fees, which add another $150,000 to $250,000 over the same period. The financed buyer entered believing the monthly payment was the cost. The cost was the accumulated total, and it was never presented that way. The second person executed what felt like the clever play. They paid cash, avoided all interest, and entered the asset free of debt service. Cash payment eliminates the interest cost, a genuine saving, real and significant. It does not eliminate depreciation, which runs on a physical and market-based clock that has nothing to do with how the purchase was financed. It does not eliminate maintenance, which runs on an engineering clock tied to hours and saltwater exposure and the age of rubber and electrical insulation. It does not eliminate carrying costs, which are assessed by the marina and insurer against the vessel and its specifications, not against the financing structure of its owner. The cash buyer saves, across a 15-year hold, perhaps $100,000 to $130,000 in interest. They absorb the same $200,000 to $300,000 in ownership costs that the finance buyer absorbs, minus that saving. They arrive at roughly the same destination. The arithmetic is less punishing. The direction is the same. The third person found the middle path, the syndicate, the charter offset, the used purchase at the bottom of the curve, or some combination of all three. They were thoughtful about it. They asked the right questions before signing. They read the survey. They negotiated the management agreement carefully. They split the slip fee with a partner who had similar usage patterns and compatible temperaments. The structure reduced their annual exposure by a genuine margin, perhaps 30 to 40% of what the unguarded purchase would have cost. And they still, across 10 years, absorbed a total cost that exceeded the original purchase price, ending with an asset worth a fraction of what they paid, in a market where buyers for aging vessels are neither plentiful nor hasty. The strategy worked. The outcome did not differ in kind, only in degree. The specifics of entry differ. The destination does not. 3 doors, 3 sets of arithmetic, 3 different rates of loss. The vessel absorbs use. Time passes. The market for a 15-year-old boat in average condition is not the market that existed when the ink was wet on the original agreement. Whoever holds the asset at exit holds the accumulated depreciation. The broker who sold it collected a commission on a fixed percentage of a transaction that happened once. The marina collected a fee every year the vessel occupied the slip. The insurer collected a premium every year the policy renewed. The maintenance yard collected by the hour every season without variance. The owner absorbed the difference between what all of those parties collected and what the vessel eventually sold for. This is not bad luck. It is the structure. The parties who get paid and the order in which they get paid is not complicated. The broker is paid at closing before the vessel leaves the dock. The lender is paid monthly on a schedule that places the heaviest interest load in the early years of the term. The insurer is paid annually in advance for coverage that is conditional on survey compliance and usage reporting. The marina is paid monthly or seasonally, with contracts that typically require notice periods of 60 to 90 days to exit without penalty. The maintenance yard is paid at the completion of each service, regardless of what the service revealed. Every one of these parties has a contractual claim that precedes the owner's ability to recover anything. The owner is last. The owner is always last. Not because the contracts were written carelessly, but because they were written carefully by parties whose legal and financial teams had considered exactly this sequence. The pattern is not accidental. The marina slip agreement was not written by someone who forgot to consider the owner's exit options. The financing instrument was not structured by someone who failed to notice that front-loaded interest serves the lender's interests ahead of the borrower's. The commission structure that places the broker on the seller's payroll while the broker walks the buyer through the vessel was not an oversight. These are engineered positions, visible in every contract, reviewed by lawyers who understand them, and invisible to buyers who have not read contracts of this type before and have no particular reason to expect that the vocabulary of transaction documents differs so substantially from the vocabulary of the doc and the dream. The system is not a conspiracy. It does not require coordination or malice. It requires only that each participant optimize for their own position within a structure that exists before any individual transaction begins. The structure persists because it is profitable for everyone in it, except the person at the center of it. A $200,000 boat is not an investment. It is a depreciating good with carrying costs that compound annually and a resale market that discounts age, condition, and model obsolescence simultaneously. It is sold as freedom, and what it delivers is freedom's form, the cockpit, the horizon, the identity, bundled with a cost structure that extracts value continuously for as long as the owner holds it. This is not an argument against buying a boat. It is a description of what a boat actually is, stated plainly in the terms that would appear in no brochure and no dockside conversation. Clarity about the cost does not make the horizon smaller, it makes the decision real. The map that the broker hands across the table is accurate about distances and depths. It is silent about who profits from every nautical mile. You now know where it leads, and the next choice is yours alone.